Imagine walking down a lively city street, your mind occupied with the daily grind, when a voice breaks through the chaos, a voice humble, yet filled with desperate hope. Can you spare $1? This is not your typical story of charity. It's about a man named Steve Harvey, a homeless veteran named James Carter, and the incredible journey that began with a single question and a simple act of kindness. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in Atlanta. The streets buzzed with energy, car horns blaring, the soulful notes of a saxophone echoing from a street performer, and hurried footsteps blending into the symphony of city life. Steve Harvey, known for his charm and humor, stepped out of a local deli, laughing heartily at a joke his assistant had just shared. He had just wrapped up a long day of filming and was in high spirits as he made his way toward his sleek black car parked nearby. As Steve walked, his gaze caught sight of a man sitting on the sidewalk. The man, older with a graying beard, wore a tattered military jacket that hinted at a proud past. The jacket's faded insignia told a story of service and sacrifice. Propped against his knees was a cardboard sign that read, "Homeless Veteran. Anything helps. God bless." Noticing Steve's glance, the man hesitated, then spoke, his voice rough but sincere. "Sir, can you spare $1?" Steve paused, the bustling city seeming to quiet around him. Something about the man's demeanor, a mix of dignity and vulnerability, resonated deeply. For a moment, the usually quick-witted Steve was silent. Then he smiled warmly. $1? He asked, his tone both curious and kind. "Why just $1?" The man, who would later introduce himself as James Carter, shrugged and managed a faint smile. "Just enough for a cup of coffee," he said. "Something warm for the cold, you know." Steve glanced at James' hands, rough and weathered, clutching the edge of his sign as though it was his lifeline. Then, breaking the tension in classic Steve Harvey style, he chuckled. "Man, you're aiming too low. If you're asking me, why not dream a little bigger?" A few passers-by slowed, intrigued by the interaction. James blinked, caught off guard. "What's your name?" Steve asked, crouching to meet his gaze. "James." "James Carter," the man replied. "Well, James," Steve said, his tone now serious, "if you could have anything right now, what would it be? And don't just say coffee." James hesitated, his eyes lowering to the pavement. "A fresh start," he said softly. "A chance to get back on my feet. But that's not something $1 can buy." Steve nodded thoughtfully. Then, with sudden energy, he stood and clapped his hands. "All right, James. Let's start with that coffee. But after that, we're going to talk about this fresh start of yours." James looked at him, bewildered. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Steve said, gesturing to his car, "you're coming with me." A small crowd watched as Steve helped James to his feet. Though hesitant, James followed, holding onto his cardboard sign as if it were a piece of his identity. An hour later, they were seated in a cozy restaurant. A steaming plate of food sat in front of James, the aroma filling the air. He hesitated briefly before diving in. As he ate, he opened up about his life. James had served in the military for 15 years, completing multiple overseas tours. He spoke with pride about his service, but his voice wavered as he described the challenges he faced upon returning home. A difficult divorce and struggles with post-traumatic stress left him unable to find stability. He worked odd jobs, but setbacks always seemed to pull him back down. "I've tried to get back on track," James said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But every time I think I'm making progress, something knocks me down." Steve listened intently. When James finished, Steve leaned forward, his gaze steady. "James, you've already proven you're a fighter. You've given more to this country than most ever will. But you can't let these setbacks define you. It's not over, man. Not by a long shot." James looked down, tears glistening in his eyes. "It's just hard to see a way out." "That's where I come in," Steve said firmly. "I can't fix everything for you, but I can help you take the first steps. And you've got to promise me one thing: when you're back on your feet, you'll help someone else." James nodded, a spark of hope flickering in his eyes. Over the next few weeks, Steve made good on his promise. He connected James with resources for veterans, securing temporary housing, career counseling, and a support group. He also invited James to share his story on his talk show, inspiring millions. Offers of support poured in, including one from a veteran-owned construction company that offered James a job as a site supervisor, complete with housing assistance. Months later, James returned to Steve's show, transformed. He stood tall in a crisp suit, confidence radiating as he shared his progress. "Steve didn't just give me $1, James said, his voice steady. "He gave me a chance to believe in myself again. And now, I'm doing my best to pay it forward." After the show, James stepped outside, spotting a young man holding a sign. Reaching into his pocket, he handed the man some money. "Don't give up," he said. "There's always hope." And so, the cycle of kindness continued, proving that even the smallest acts can create ripples of change.